With the second pick in the 2026 NBA Draft, the Utah Jazz select Darryn Peterson from the University of Kansas.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Basketball in the Mountains. I'm your host, as always, Tyler King, here to talk all things hoops in the Mountain Time Zone. This is episode 92, and as you can guess by the intro video today, we are talking about the Utah Jazz and Darryn Peterson, the number 2 pick in the 2026 NBA Draft. The Jazz getting their guy, one of the top prospects in this draft class. Obviously, my number 2 prospect. I had him below Cameron Bruiser from Duke, obviously, but an incredible talent, one of the top recruits from the high school class this past season, and just an incredible star bet for the Utah Jazz. This is a solo edition for me here on the pod. We're going to be talking about this Jazz pick and what the Nuggets did in the NBA draft, the Phoenix Suns as well, in addition to some moves, rumors, all that kind of stuff. The NBA offseason is here, ramping up. We've got a couple days left until the free agency period officially opens up, and then about a week into June, we've got the start of the new league year when all those trades and stuff can officially start being processed. But at the top of the show, just a quick reminder to, as always, subscribe wherever you're listening, whether that's on Apple or Spotify today. Leave those 5-star ratings on those platforms as well. Make sure you're following the show on Spotify. I know it's not technically subscribing, but all that stuff is super appreciated by me. Helps me grow the show. Same thing on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel. We're posting a lot of clips on YouTube Shorts from all these episodes now, and over on TikTok as well. You can just search Basketball in the Mountains over on that platform as well. You can find a lot of the clips from these shows, especially a show like today where it's just me rambling about giving my thoughts on the draft and kind of what's to come here in the NBA offseason. So all we're going to be talking about today. We'll save some more college stuff for a little bit later in the offseason. Now that the later in the summer, I should say, because now that the NBA offseason is really fully here, we're going to have a lot to talk about on the show over the next couple of weeks. Over the weeks to come, we've got Summer League coming up. Like I said, after a lot of the moves will be made early in July, and then the league will reconvene in Vegas for Summer League. We'll get a chance to see Darryn Peterson, the guys the Nuggets drafted. Same for the Suns as well. They took Peat at the end of the first round. A really, really cool story for Phoenix kid, Arizona, Mr. Arizona, if you will. Plays his high school ball at Perry, has a great high school career there, plays 1 year at Arizona, makes the Final Four, was a key piece to that team, and now gets drafted by his hometown team with the last pick in the first round. So that's super cool. We'll talk about that as well today. But obviously, we have to start with the Jazz and Darryn Peterson. It's a very Danny Ainge pick, even if, like I said at the top of the show a little bit here, I had Cameron Bruiser number 1 on my personal big board. I kind of get why the Jazz made this pick. It's a very Ainge-esque pick. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Ace Bailey situation last year, where Ace Bailey seemed like he was trying to get his way to Washington, D.C. or to Brooklyn, who were picking after the Jazz at number 5, but the Jazz didn't really care. They were betting on the talent, and Ace Bailey ends up having a pretty solid rookie season. We talked about this a couple months ago on the podcast. Just a quiet rookie season for Ace Bailey, but a compliment that way. We'll see how long his Utah Jazz career goes. Like, it seems like he enjoyed his first season in Utah. Has been doing some stuff in the community in Salt Lake City. Now that the offseason is here, seems like he's spending some time, in Utah with his offseason, kind of getting together with the coaching staff and I was in the front office as well, getting his development program for the summer, kind of what they want him to work on going into year 2, because he's going to be a big piece of this team. It's probably going to be the 6th man on this team going in, because Darryn Peterson, for all the reasons we talked about in the lead up to the draft, and we've been talking about this honestly since the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade was mentioned. I remember the day after the Jazz acquired Jaren Jackson Jr. that they were still not really sure if they were going to keep their pick or not. They were obviously trying very hard to keep their pick, ended up doing so. That coin flip that they win with the Kings obviously works out really well for them, and it's the reason they picked had the number 2 pick and not the 7th pick in the draft. And what I said months ago after the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade was, there's just one, not giant hole, but one hole left in the starting lineup, and that is the 2-guard spot. And if you can fill it with somebody like Darryn Peterson, who at that time I did have him number 1 on my draft big board. He was my number 1 player coming into the season. I was just enamored by his high school tape. Obviously, an up and down year at Kansas for all the reasons we talked about in the pre-draft process as well. But like I said, I remember saying after the Triple J trade that if you can plug Darryn Peterson into the starting five next season, this immediately becomes a top 6 team in the West, in my opinion, and a playoff contender, and a team that has a very bright future going forward in the Western Conference, despite the Oklahoma City Thunder not going anywhere, despite the San Antonio Spurs not going anywhere, despite Nikola Jokic still existing on the Denver Nuggets, even if they've had a couple straight years of disappointing postseason exits. The Minnesota Timberwolves are still trying to gear up to be competitive. They just traded for LaMelo Ball now, but I really think the Jazz are going to be a team immediately starting next season now with Darryn Peterson, who has a runway to get some on-ball reps, get some off-ball reps, just kind of try to fit into what Will Hardy's system is. And now Will Hardy gets let loose and can try to actually win basketball games here, which I think he's probably the most happy person about this. But it makes sense for Utah that they're going with Darryn Peterson here, looking for the last missing piece for their rebuild here to really kind of go full steam ahead in the rest of the 2020s. And Darryn Peterson is a guy I think worth betting on. Obviously, the like I said, a weird season at Kansas where he's kind of in and out of the lineup. It seemed like a lot of that stuff at this point was just maybe being overly precautionary with some of the cramping stuff he was dealing with. We'll see if the creatine thing was actually a thing, or he said he's been working out 3 times a day in the lead up to the draft process. And now that he's down, Utah is going to continue this workout regimen. Like he hasn't been dealing with the cramps, all that kind of. He says it's in the past. He says everything that happened at Kansas is in the past. We'll see if that happens. Obviously, I'm eager, as is everybody. I'm assuming all the Jazz fans listening are eager to see him at Summer League. We'll see if any other young players are going to be at Summer League with him. I think that's very interesting. But Darryn Peterson is the guy now in Salt Lake City. I mean, obviously, Keontae George is going to be the team's starting point guard. And I think Darryn even said today, part of the reason I waited to do this a couple days after the draft, I had some stuff going on had been working on some projects recently at my day job at the Denver Gazette, but also wanted to wait to see some of the introductory pressers come out, read some of the quotes, watch some of the clips from that, and got to do that today with Darryn, who officially got into Salt Lake City yesterday. Really cool scene at the airport there, where they had a bunch of kids and little Jazz fans greeting him, and he got off the plane. He signed some autographs, took some pictures. That was just a cool scene to kind of welcome him to Utah. Not just the typical, dapping up the president of basketball operations or the GM and the coach or an ex-star player when you get off the private jet there in wherever you're landing. So that was a pretty cool thing that the Jazz were able to do. And then obviously that the introductory presser here today on Saturday, a little bit before I'm recording this here in the evening here in Denver. But I would be super excited if I was a Jazz fan, because I think, you look at this starting lineup now with Keontae George, Darryn Peterson, Lauri Markkanen, and Jaren Jackson Jr., and then assuming Walker Kessler comes back, we could talk about that, a little bit. I saw he it sounded like he declined the first offer that was out there from the Jazz. I think it was about 5 years, 140, about $28 million annual average value per year for that contract. I think that's pretty reasonable. And considering what kind of Jalen Duren's after, the center market's going to be very fascinating across the league this offseason to kind of see who goes, if anybody moves, or kind of how dissatisfied guys are with kind of the offers they're getting from their current teams. I mean, from a Walker Kessler perspective and a Jazz perspective, I really don't know who out there is to worry about in terms of trying to give him an offer sheet that the Jazz wouldn't be willing to re-sign him at. And honestly, I think anything under $35 million a year, the Jazz are probably going to just re-sign, match that offer sheet and just kind of go from there. They've got, I think it's about 40-ish million in cap space left over. After guys, obviously Darryn Peterson is going to make about $13 million a year next season. You've got a bunch of first-round picks that are a little bit less, other first-round picks that are a little bit less than that, and obviously Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. making a little bit under $100 million combined going into next season. So I think the Jazz would like to keep Walker Kessler around that $30 million a year number going forward, and I would still be surprised if he's not back on the Jazz next season. Like I mentioned, I think one of the main suitors you were worried about was probably the Chicago Bulls, but they just acquired Nick Claxton in a 3-team trade that was part of that Julius Randle salary dump with Brooklyn as well. That might turn into an even bigger trade, but the Bulls got Nick Claxton out of that deal as well. And they were one of the teams I think Jazz fans were a little bit worried about throwing an offer sheet at Walker Kessler, and that's probably off the table at this point. Lakers, we'll see. They signed they're going to re-sign Austin Reeves to a max contract extension, but they don't have to do that right away. That'll probably get done after they use up their cap space, and then just absorb, go over the cap with whatever they're doing with Austin Reeves, which it seemed like there was plenty of interest out there from other suitors that they just had to give him the max. So we'll see if the Lakers are interested there. It seems like Peyton Watson could be somebody they're going after. They still have the LeBron situation to monitor as well if they want to give him a decent sized contract or just use up their cap space and say, hey, if you want to come back, you can come back at this number. That'll be interesting from a Lakers perspective. But from a Jazz perspective, I still think, these are the 5 guys going forward in the starting lineup. Then you've got Ace Bailey coming off the bench, and then a bunch of, guys that we've talked about this at the end of the season, guys that could be role players on this team that have kind of gotten a lot of chances to improve over the last couple of years and kind of show progress, and show maybe a willingness to do all the little things that playoff teams need you to do outside of your superstars. To be successful. Cody Williams comes to mind. John Conchar, a guy that was part of that Jaren Jackson Jr. trade. Bryce Sensabaugh, Steve Mikhailuk, Kyle Filipowski, who very graciously gave up number 22 to Darryn Peterson, although Darren said today that I think he came to a deal with Kyle Filipowski, who's now going to wear number 2. So Isaiah Collier as well is one of these guys. Like, the Jazz have 12-ish guys that I think could make up a solid rotation going into next season, assuming they're all part of the team going into next year. I think this is just a really, really exciting group, a group that's going to be fun to watch. I think obviously Will Hardy, he hasn't gotten to show off all of his coaching chops over the last couple of years, but I do think he's one of the best young coaches in the league. There's a reason the Jazz have already given him, they gave him the long contract to begin with when they first hired him, and now have given him an extension off of that. Like, he's earned some goodwill in the front office for being a good soldier, so to speak, with some of the tanking that the Jazz have done in the last couple of years. But now shackles are off, if you will. The Jazz are going full steam ahead, looking to win, come right into next season. And I think Darryn Peterson is going to be a big part of that right away. I think he's going to have a big role right away in what they do, both offensively and defensively. He was talking today about his defensive abilities during the introductory press conference, saying that he feels like he can be a guy that has the tools to be an elite on-ball defender. I think he's a good off-ball defender too at times, especially this past season at Kansas. So, like I said, eager to see how he fits in once the season comes around, and fits alongside guys that do have really good offensive skills like Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen, are guys that deserve a lot of touches and can score 20, 25 plus points per game. I mean, Darren right away, I think, is a guy that's going to be, you're hoping scores 20 plus points per game, and has the ball in his hands and is playmaking for others as well. But yeah, it's just, I think even if I maybe would have taken Cameron Bruiser, just my personal preference, I think the Jazz are perfectly well within their right to believe in Darryn Peterson, to believe in the upside, because I still do believe he has the highest upside in the class. I think I said this on a podcast recently that I think there are outcomes out there for Darren. I don't know how likely is he gets to these outcomes, but there are outcomes out there for Darren where he is one of the best guards of the 21st century. Like, I just see that in him. Like, you can't deny the tools, his raw shooting ability, his raw scoring ability. It's all there when you watch, whether it's high school tape or even some of the best stuff of him at Kansas. Like, a guy that is explosive going to the rim, but is really just a knockdown shooter from everyone on the court, whether that's beyond the arc or creating for himself in the mid range. I'd like to see Darren attack the basket a little bit more, especially starting in summer league here. But this is a guy that can be the tent pole of your organization, can be the star, the number one option. I really believe that those outcomes are in there for Darren, and that's why I had him number one on my big board for much of the year, even if I did drop him to number 2 by the end of the process. That was more about my love for Cam Boozer than anything, and not about any kind of questions I had for Darryn Peterson. Like I said multiple times in the lead up to the draft, I thought there was realistic star outcomes for all 3 of Cam Boozer, Darryn Peterson, and AJ Demancza, my top 3. So this is a home run for the Jazz. Them having their multiple years long rebuild here end with them getting the number 2 pick, first time in 40 years that the franchise has picked this high, and have it be a player as the caliber of Darryn Peterson. I think it's just super exciting for the franchise going forward. And It seems like he's, obviously there was stuff before the draft about him not working out for any teams other than the Wizards. Seemed like he wanted to go number one, but when the Wizards made it clear that they were going to take AJ DeBanza, he opened up more to the idea of meeting with the Jazz. And it seems like that relationship, nothing is wrong there. It seems like everything is going well with the Jazz and with Darryn kind of moving forward. And he's excited to be a part of this organization. The organization is obviously thrilled to have him, like I said, as one of the key guys going forward. So we'll move off of the Jazz for now, because there is a lot of other stuff to get to. I mentioned Peat at the top of the show. The Suns trade into the first round. They didn't have a first round pick, but used 3 second-round picks, one of which was this year, to move in to pick number 30 and take Peat, Arizona native. Like I said, I made some comments before the draft about Peat. I wasn't the biggest fan of his in this draft. Like, I really thought he should have went back to Arizona, worked on his game. I think the shot needs to be completely reworked. But I really don't want to dampen the mood for Suns fans, because I think at the end of the first round, this is a guy, the pedigree, the athletic profile. I think it's a bet worth taking at the end of the first round. And honestly, I had him number 30 on my board, on my big board. So the Jazz taking him the Suns taking him at number 30, I can't really complain with that. And I think that the Suns are in a position where he's not going to have to play right away. Obviously, they've got guys in the front court coming back next season. We'll talk about the Mark Williams extension, which I think was a really good contract. But you've got guys like Rasheer Fleming, Oso Ighodaro, Ryan Dunn, Royce O'Neal, assuming he's back. We'll talk about the financial stuff with the Suns in a little bit. But Dylan Brooks, obviously a front court guy as well. There are guys that are going to be ahead of Peat on the depth chart. I think he'll spend a decent amount of time in the G League this season, or at least he should, just kind of working on his game and becoming more of a guy that has more tools offensively. And obviously, like I said, the shot is going to be need to be completely reworked. And the Suns have not shown, especially in this Brian Gregory era, have not shown a hesitance to take first-round draft picks and put him in the G League. I mean, Kaman Wallowatch spent a lot of time in the G League last season, and honestly, you could see the progress throughout the season. By the end of the season, when he was getting some spot minutes with the Suns, you could see that he was definitely clearly grown as a player. So, and Rasheer Fleming obviously spent a lot of time in the G League last season, and by the end of it, I really thought he was a guy that should have been a part of the playoff rotation. So, and I think he should be, if not the starting power forward going into next season, the first guy off the bench in terms of that 4 spot. So, there's going to be some runway here for Peat to really learn and grow. And the Suns have him on a 4-year deal. I think that was part of the intrigue with, or some of the excitement, I think, with trading into the first round, is kind of that guaranteed contract and kind of a guaranteed window of time for a rookie contract where you can work on, where a guy can work on his skills instead of just taking him in the second round. And then it's kind of, there's no guaranteed contract structure in the second round. A lot of guys in the second round this year are going to sign 2 ways or not sign at all. I think the Clippers signed a player or drafted a player at the end of the second round who's going to go play at Auburn this year. I mean, the draft and stash is now being used in college basketball. So that just kind of is part of it. But yeah, I think Peat, it's a worthy bet for Phoenix. Like I said, they believe in the character. Obviously, there was obviously no character concerns there. Like everybody said, whether it's Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, teammates, everybody has said glowing things about Peat. So honestly, if Suns believe he's willing to put in the work to develop the shot and become a more useful offensive player, at 6'7", a guy who's obviously built really, really well. He's really physically impressive. You saw that throughout the season with Arizona. There's just obviously little things, certain things he's going to need to work on to become a useful NBA player. And like I said, there's plenty of time for that to happen and develop. And it's a worthy project for the Suns at the end of the first round, who, like I said, didn't really give up a ton to go up and get him. 3 second-round picks. It kind of is what it is. One of them was like in the 40s this year. There are a couple later. I think there's a 2028 second and a 2030 second. I don't even know if any of them are the Suns. So that's not a bad price to pay for going up and getting your guy if you really believe in him. So, and like I mentioned, Mark Williams is coming back now. That was official. I wasn't sure what the Mark Williams restricted free agency market was going to look like, but Suns obviously wanted to get on top of that and got him back. 3 years, $38 million is a great piece of work by the Phoenix Suns front office. Obviously, we already talked about the Colin Gillespie and Jordan Goodwin contracts on a previous episode and how great those were numbers-wise. Mark Williams going to slot in under $13 million annually per year. I think next year it's going to be under $12 million. So there's just a great deal for Phoenix. I mean, obviously, Mark Williams was good when he was on the floor last year, but as has been the case with Mark Williams in the entirety of his career so far, he's just hasn't been out there enough to really warrant the contract of a player who is as productive as he is when he is out there. Like you would think that's a $20-25 million a year guy. He's a pretty right down the middle average center. It can be above average center at times for what he can do on both ends of the floor. But great piece of work by the front office. Like I said, Suns should be happy to have him back. Does make this a little interesting in terms of what the financial situation looks like in Phoenix. Obviously, Matt Ishbia is a guy who has never been afraid to pay into the first apron, which they are. I think $8 million over the first apron right now, and about $4 million under, a little over $4 million under the second apron. I mean, all 15 roster spots are filled as of right now. I mean, there's some non-guaranteed contracts in there with like Haywood Highsmith and Jamari Bouye that could come off the books as well. But this Suns team is kind of set going into next year, barring a trade. Like I said on a previous episode, I think Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, one of those guys could get moved out if the Suns are looking to save some money against the tax. I wouldn't be surprised if they were doing that. I mean, both those guys were in and out of the lineup last season. Grayson Allen had more, I think, injury issues than Royce O'Neal, but also had a pretty solid shooting season. So we'll see if both those guys, I wouldn't expect both those guys to be gone, but if one of those guys gets moved off of, if the Suns are moving off one of those guys to save some salary, I wouldn't be surprised by that as well. Like I said, because you have some young guys that you want to play. I think Colin Gillespie, you want to see him take a bigger role. So maybe it is Grayson Allen, somebody like that. That is a casualty of that, and just trying to save some money as well. So some shrewd business, more shrewd business by the Suns in locking up Mark Williams for 3 years, and then being aggressive, going up and getting Peat, a guy that they feel like they can develop in their organization over the next couple of years. I think it's going to be interesting to follow. It's a great story. Like I said, I don't want to dampen the mood, even if I wasn't super high on Koa and felt like he should have went back to college for at least one more year to just kind of work on his game, because I trust Tommy Lloyd and the Arizona staff and all that. So we'll move on to the Nuggets to wrap up this episode. They drafted 2 players, most notably, obviously, Trevon Brazile from Arkansas. He was a 5-year player, actually, began his career at Missouri and then spent the last 4 years at Arkansas. Had his most productive season minutes wise and just numbers wise this past year. His best shooting season was his junior season at Arkansas in 2025. So, but this past season, still 62% true shooting, a little over 34% from 3. He took 132 of them, which was over double what he had ever taken in his career at any point before, or almost double kind of what he had taken the season before. He's a guy that's always shot efficiently from 2. I think he shot over 78% to a season ago, and then this past year was back down towards 65%, but still true shooting around 62%. He was a part of a great offense, obviously, at Arkansas with Darius Acuff at the center of it. We'll see what the contract looks like for him. Not really too intrigued, but I think as he's just another 4 option, like he is basically a stretch 4. You're hoping is a guy that could play some defense for you as well. But that the Nuggets obviously trade out of the first round. They had the 26th pick, and it felt like they were just going to take the pick. The clock was kind of winding down, and then they ended up trading it to the Spurs, who took Terrace Reed, the big man, the veteran big man from UConn, who I actually thought would have been a good fit for the Nuggets at that spot. I love Zuby Ejiofor for them. Joshua Jefferson as well. That's probably who I would have just taken. He was available when the Nuggets were on the clock, but and I would have probably would have taken him. But Nuggets, I think, are trading out of the first round. Like I mentioned, second round picks do not have any kind of guaranteed contract structure. So trying to maintain some financial flexibility because the Peyton Watson free agency is looming. Like I've said, it's not looming. It's ongoing. I'm sure those conversations between Peyton's representatives and the Nuggets are still happening. I saw a report out there today that he was looking for, or the market was the Nuggets, I think it was Brett Siegel who had this, that the Nuggets were expecting to pay between 20 and 38 million per year to keep Peyton Watson, which that's pretty crazy. I don't know if I would want to go there. I honestly understand wanting to keep Peyton Watson around. Because he showed such great progress this past season on the ball when the Nuggets were really super injured in that January and February, most of the January period, and he was one of the catalysts for them kind of keeping pace in the Western Conference, playing so well. So it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. Obviously, it's pretty clear the Nuggets are not going to go in the second apron to keep Peyton Watson or to keep this team together, and that's what it would take without trading anybody. So I saw there's reports out there as well that the Nuggets prefer to trade Cam Johnson or Christian Brown rather than Aaron Gordon or Jamal Murray to shed salary. I think that's pretty obvious, but I don't know. I think anything could happen for the Nuggets in the coming week, because obviously the big report out there today from Mark Stein and Jake Fisher, who works with Mark Stein. There was kind of a big dump of news surrounding the Nuggets, was that Nikola Jokic might not sign his contract extension this summer, which I think the Nuggets were just kind of expecting that he would sign it as soon as he was eligible. And obviously, Nikola Jokic said after they lost in Minnesota in Game 6 that he still wants to be a Nugget for life. I don't doubt that, but maybe this is just the first sign of Nikola Jokic putting some pressure on the organization to make some real changes. Like, obviously, Joker has been a guy that has not been, it's just kind of let the front office do its thing. He's not really kind of getting involved with kind of decisions that are being made or putting any kind of pressure to make a certain type of move. But maybe he does at this point of his career, heading into what is likely going to be his last big contract. We've talked about him as a guy. He could probably play late into his late 30s and at a high level if he wants to, but he's always felt like a guy that doesn't interest him. Like, this might be one last really big contract, and that's it for Nikola Jokic. Still, 5 more years left starting next season, but it feels like maybe he's starting to think about at this point, kind of what does he want the end of his career to look like, and kind of what does he think is best in terms of chasing one more championship ring. So I think that'll be fascinating. Like, I think there was also part of that these swath of rumors that's been coming out recently is that the Nuggets were kind of checking in on the Jaylen Brown market and seeing kind of what they could offer. I don't see a scenario in which that's not Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray going back to Boston. I think Jaylen Brown makes about $57 million starting next season. He's going to get up into the 60s as well. I think he's got 3 years left. He's going to be extension eligible soon as well. And it feels like that situation in Boston is a little bit untenable, considering how heavily they were involved with the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes. And Jaylen Brown would have been the headliner of that package going back to Milwaukee. So maybe it's Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and Zeke Naji for Derek White, Colorado native. Derek White, Colorado men's basketball president of basketball strategy as well. That was another thing I was working on this week up in Boulder. Maybe he's part of that trade with Jaylen Brown coming back to the Nuggets. That salary works. It saves the Nuggets, I think, about $2 million. So you're still going to need to trade either one of Christian Brown or Cameron Johnson to bring back Peyton Watson in that scenario. But maybe that's just a way to shake things up. And maybe the Nuggets believe that and a more on-ball role for not more on-ball role, but Jaylen Brown would be happy in Denver playing alongside Nikola Jokic. It seems like everybody has a career when they come play with Nikola Jokic, and they just think that Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic two-man game has kind of run its course. That's something my colleague Vinny Benedetto and I have talked about a lot on this podcast since the end of the season. So interesting times for the Nuggets, because the trades are going to happen, or maybe not trades if they just don't bring back Peyton Watson, but it seems like they're really eager to do so. So we'll see what happens. I think one thing's for sure is Jonas Valanciunas won't be back. They'll waive him, and then that $2 million that is guaranteed for next season, the $2 million of the $10 million, what his salary would be next season. I think they'll just waive him the $2 million guaranteed. They'll waive and stretch that. So you're looking at about $667,000 for next season and for the next 3 seasons against the cap. So really, really manageable. They can save basically over $9 million over the cap next season just by waiving Jonas Valanciunas. Like I said, the Zeke Naji contract's a little bit over $7 million. So there are avenues to create space, but if they want to bring back Peyton Watson, somebody else in the starting lineup is going to have to go. That's what we've talked about time and time again here. They haven't exercised Jalen Pickett's team option yet. I think the front office said after the draft the other day that they were still evaluating that. Not really was a ton was said by Ben Tenzer or John Wallace after the draft, because they're still negotiating with Peyton Watson, still trying to figure out what they want to do. But I really do feel like this could be an offseason of change here in Denver. And I think it's something we'll be keeping track of going into next week, because the Nuggets didn't make a big splash in the draft. It seems like they maybe were going to try and trade up into the teens to get a guard or somebody that, or maybe it's even a forward that they felt could have played right away. But that obviously didn't happen. And they trade out of the first round, get Trevor Brazile. Like I said, they also took Bryce Hopkins, I should mention, from St. John's in the second round. Signed a couple of guys to Exhibit 10 contracts, like Mark Mitchell from Missouri was the most interesting. This guy began his career at Duke, was a pretty solid college player for a couple of years, but so nothing really of grand grand importance happening for the Nuggets in the draft. So I think the next week or two will be where we see the majority of the big moves happening for the Nuggets, kind of defining what the next era will be under Nikola Jokic. Assuming, look, I really don't think Nikola Jokic is going to leave the Nuggets at any point in his NBA career. Like, I think he will be a Nugget for life, like you said. I don't think he's going to play for another NBA team. So I wouldn't worry about that. But maybe like I said, he's trying to put real pressure on the franchise going forward and trying to maybe have a say in what this looks like, because of, for all the reasons we talked about, the Nuggets just were not competitive enough against a very injured Timberwolves team by the end of that series. And it felt like the Nuggets should have at least got to the second round. And then maybe they bow out against the Spurs who make the finals. But that's 3 straight years since the NBA title of not making it back to even the conference finals. And I think that's just not going to cut it for what you feel like you can achieve with Nikola Jokic, who's still a top 3 player in the world in my view. I think there was a time during this NBA season where Nikola Jokic looked like he was going to run away with the MVP. I certainly thought that after that Christmas night game against the Timberwolves, when he went off 40+ point triple-double, just an incredible performance. I was like, he's just going to run away with another MVP. That obviously didn't happen. Shea wins back-to-back because Joker gets hurt for the first time really in his career, misses a couple of weeks. He was still eligible he's still eligible for awards, but I just, his play in the back half of the year after the injury just wasn't the same. Maybe he comes back and looks like the same guy. I wouldn't be surprised. I would kind of bet on it actually that Nikola Jokic would come back next season and look like the guy we saw in the first half of last season when he was setting the world on fire. But the team around him, that could look very different. So we'll be here to monitor all of it on the podcast. So I appreciate everybody bearing with me today for a solo episode, giving some of my thoughts, rants, if you will, on the draft, all things Jazz, Suns, Nuggets. We'll be covering it all as the NBA offseason really heats up here starting next week. Not sure when we'll be back. It'll kind of be dependent on news at this time of the year, but and I've got some traveling to do for my day job at the Denver Gazette next month a little bit as well. So I appreciate everybody listening once again. Like I said at the top of the show, make sure you're subscribed wherever you're doing so. Make sure you're leaving likes on the videos, leaving comments. All that stuff helps it get out there to a bigger audience. So appreciate all of that and appreciate all of you, and enjoy the weekend.